Alphonse Gabriel Capone, or Al Capone, was an American gangster who led a crime syndicate dedicated to the smuggling and bootlegging of liquor and other illegal activities during the Prohibition era of the 1920s and 1930s. Born January 17, 1899, to southwestern Italian immigrants Gabriel and Teresina Capone, Al would be the fourth of a family of 8 children, and grew up in a humble abode in Park Slope, Brooklyn. Capone would drop out of the New York public school system at the age of 14, after being expelled from Public School 133. He worked odd jobs around Brooklyn, including in a candy store and in a bowling alley. During this time, Capone was influenced by gangster Johnny Torrio, whom he came to regard as a mentor figure. After his initial stint with small-time gangs including the Junior 40 Thieves, Capone joined the Brooklyn Rippers and then the notorious 5 Points Gang. He would then be mentored and employed by racketeer Frankie Yale and bartend in a Coney Island dance hall and saloon called the Harvard Inn. It was in this field that Capone received the scars that would give him the nickname of Scarface. After the 1923 election of reform mayor William Emmett Deaver, Chicago city government began to put pressure on the gangster elements inside the city limits. To put its headquarters outside of the city jurisdiction and create a safe zone for its operation, the Capone organization muscled its way into Cicero, Illinois. This led to one of Capone's greatest triumphs, the takeover of Cicero's town government in 1924. Cicero gangsters Miles O'Donnell and his brother William O'Donnell fought with Capone over their home turf. This gang war resulted in over 200 deaths, including that of the infamous hanging prosecutor Bill McSwiggins. Capone was notorious during the Prohibition era for his control of large portions of the Chicago underworld, which provided his outfit with an estimated $100 million per year in revenue. This wealth was generated through all manner of illegal enterprises, such as gambling and prostitution, although the largest moneymaker was the sale of liquor. The demand for this liquor was met by a transportation network that moved smuggled liquor from the Rum Runners of the East Coast and the Purple Gang in Detroit, and local production in the form of Midwestern moonshine operations and illegal breweries. With the funds generated by his bootlegging operations, Capone's grip on the political and law enforcement establishments in Chicago grew ever stronger. The violence that led to Capone's unprecedented level of criminal success drew the ire of Capone's rivals and spurred their retaliation, particularly his bitter rivals, North Side gangsters Hymie Weiss and Bugs Moran. More than once Capone's car would be riddled with bullets. These attacks prompted Capone to fit his Cadillac with bulletproof glass, run-flat tires, and a police siren. Every attempt on his life, mainly by Moran, left him increasingly shaken. Later this car would be seized by the Treasury Department in 1932 and be used as President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's personal limousine. Capone arranged the most notorious gangland killing of the century, the 1929 St. Valentine's Day Massacre in the Lincoln Park neighborhood on Chicago's North Side. The massacre was the outfit's effort to strike back at Bugs Moran's North Side gang, which had become increasingly bold in hijacking the outfit's booze trucks, assassinating 2 presidents of the outfit's controlled Union Siciliana, and 3 assassination attempts on one of Capone's top enforcers, Jack McGurn. To monitor their targets' habits and movements, Capone's men rented an apartment across from the trucking warehouse that served as a Moran headquarters. On the morning of Thursday, February 14, 1929, Capone's lookouts signaled gunmen disguised as police to start a raid. The fake police lined the 7 victims along a wall without a struggle, then signaled for accomplices with machine guns. The 7 victims were machine gunned and shotgunned, each with 15 to 20 or more bullets in each body. Photos of the massacre shocked the public and greatly harmed Capone in the public opinion, thereby prompting federal law enforcement to focus more closely on investigating his activities. In 1931, Capone was indicted for income tax evasion and various violations of the Volstead Act. Facing overwhelming evidence, his attorneys made a plea deal, but the presiding judge warned he might not follow the sentencing recommendation from the prosecution, so Capone withdrew his plea of guilty. Attempting to bribe and intimidate the potential jurors, his plan was discovered by the police. The jury pool was then switched with one from another case. Following a long trial, he was found guilty on some income tax evasion counts. The judge gave him an 11-year sentence along with heavy fines and liens that were filed against his various properties. His appeal was denied, and in May of 1932, Capone was sent to Atlanta U.S. Penitentiary, a tough federal prison, but was able to obtain special privileges. He was then transferred to Alcatraz, where tight security and an uncompromising warden ensured that Capone had no contact with the outside world. His isolation from his associates and the repeal of Prohibition in December of 1933 diminished his power greatly. Capone would complete his term in Alcatraz on January 6 of 1939 and was then transferred to the Federal Correctional Institution at Terminal Island in California to serve a 1-year misdemeanor sentence. He was paroled on November 16, 1939, and spent a short time in a hospital, then returned to his home in Palm Island, Florida. Capone's control and interests within organized crime diminished rapidly after his imprisonment, and he was no longer able to run the outfit after his release. He had lost weight, and his physical and mental health had deteriorated under the effects of neurosyphilis. On January 21, 1947, Capone had an epileptic stroke. He regained consciousness and started to improve, but contracted pneumonia on January 24th. He would suffer a fatal cardiac arrest the next day. Capone was buried in Mount Olivet Cemetery in Chicago's far southwest side between the graves of his father Gabriel and his brother Frank. However, in March 1950, the remains of all three family members were moved to Mount Carmel Cemetery in Hillside, Illinois, west of Chicago. One of the most notorious American gangsters of the 20th century, Capone has been the subject of numerous articles, books, and films. Capone's personality and character have been used in fiction as a model for crime lords and criminal masterminds ever since his death. Thus, he has left a lasting legacy as both a historical criminal and a pop culture influence for today's criminal masterminds.